So if you're an immigrant, anything other than a U.S. citizen, and you're facing criminal charges, this webinar is for you. Today, we're going to talk about what is a conviction for immigration purposes. My name is Jorge Molina. I am an immigration attorney based in Dallas-Fort Worth, but serving worldwide. And it's a pleasure to be with you today. This is a very important topic because it really does determine whether someone would be eligible for a green card, could lose their status in the United States, or could face the possibility of deportation or the inability of applying for citizenship. So why should you care what the definition of conviction is for immigration purposes? Well, first, as I just briefly referenced, it could get you in trouble, and you might end up in deportation proceedings. In other circumstances, it might prevent you from being eligible for citizenship or being able to travel outside the United States without being referred to immigration court. So why is the definition of a conviction important? Because in our federal system, we need to deal with the different definitions between state law, municipal laws, federal government, and other sources of law. So for immigration purposes, it's not what controls is the federal definition, not the state definition, or what your lawyer could have told you, say, hey, it won't have an effect, right? So you need to be very careful with that. So if you're facing any criminal charges, or you're currently criminal proceedings, and you're not a U.S. citizen, before you plead, before you accept anything, before you move forward, make sure you have the advice of an immigration attorney, so as to avoid any potential immigration consequences, or at least understand fully what the immigration consequences are. But anyway, going back to the theme of what a conviction is under the immigration definition. Well, first, a conviction is any final judgment of guilt by a court of law. So, if a judge finds you guilty, that is a conviction. If you plead guilty, that's also a conviction. But aside from being found guilty and there's a formal conviction, let's say you're offered deferred education. Now, if it meets two differences or two elements, it would be a conviction. So first, that either the person is pleads no contest or guilty, and there's a punishment or penalty or a restraint on liberty imposed to that person. So, all right, all these legal terms, what do they mean? So let's say in the state of Texas, the prosecution is offering you deferred education. So how does that work? Deferred education, so you go before a court, and you need to either plead no contest or guilty. The court finds that everything that you're admitting to, or you're pleading no contest to, is supported by the record. They impose a sentence, and then the court says, you know what, since the parts agreed to this, what we're going to do is that we're going to take the sentence, we're going to cast it aside, instead of having a formal trial or a formal adjudication of this case. And we're going to let you do something else, let's say probation or community service or something of that nature. And then once you complete those matters, we're going to go ahead and dismiss these proceedings. So that's what deferred education is in essence. But that has no effect for immigration purposes. That is a conviction in the immigration world because, one, there's a judge deciding that there's enough evidence to convict you. You either plead guilty or no contest, and there's some form of penalty imposed to you. So whether it's a fine, whether it's community service, whether it's checking in with your probation officer, doing drug tests, that is either punishment, penalty, or restraint in your liberty. Therefore, it meets all the elements for a conviction under immigration purposes. Now, contrast that to a pretrial diversion program. Usually these programs are managed and controlled by the prosecution and not by a judge. So it means that there's no judge involved. when you're taking responsibility for your actions, completing some classes, right? So the key here is that first, you're not really pleading guilty or no contest. You might be taking ownership for your actions and your mistakes, but there's no formal pleading to a judge, which is key. And the more important thing is that there's no judge involved. So in those cases, um, most often than not, it's found that it's not a conviction for immigration purposes. But here's a big picture. If you're facing criminal proceedings, criminal charges, you're worried about something that could happen, and you're worried about your immigration status, whether you or a loved one might lose it. So before you plead, before you move forward, consult an immigration attorney. The last thing you want to do is plead to something and then realize that it might make it impossible for you to stay in the United States or to come back. So even if it's a citation, a ticket for possession of marijuana or paraphernalia dealing with a controlled substance, it could have serious immigration consequences. So before you plead, talk to a immigration attorney who understands your case and will give you the advice you need to move forward. Again, my name is Jorge Molina. We'll be eager and happy to help you if this is you or a loved one. And you can always reach us at 469-708-5800. Again, 469-708-5800. Or you can send us an email at info@jmolina.law. Again, info@jmolina.law. Thank you.